everyone. You can see I was really anxious to get started, right? So, and that may not be the only goof I make in the next hour and 20 minutes or so. Festivals. When I was told to do this, I thought, yay, I love festivals. I work in festivals a lot, and my latest job was the Hong Kong Arts Festival, which I adore. And then I met these people, and I thought, what do we have in common? How are we going to get this conversation going? And we will find out. So on stage with me, you have the names. So Emily runs the very prestigious Holland Festival, which has strong reputation for innovative work. Dorcy, Dorcy has the newest festival of the lot, a triennial for Rwanda, with a very specific purpose. Martha also has a relatively new festival, 11 years, 14, with a very specific social purpose. Harold runs a huge, the numbers are scary, of the Avignon, of Avignon, okay? So I'm gonna ask them to each say a little bit about what they are doing, because some of them come from very different backgrounds than the performing arts. And then my invitation to them is to get in there and have a conversation, and I hope with you as well. As we were backstage, what we talked about, there was a lot that linked up with the other discussions of today. Resonance, conflict, what we're doing, leadership, how we're dealing with our organizations. So I'm going to now drop Emily right in it and say, okay, Emily, you came from a visual arts background, basically. Yes. And then, you know, like what possessed you and how are you, what, to get into this world? And now that you're running this Holland, not now, you've been doing this for a few years now. What is different about how you approach this festival, this enormous institution, and how do you want to take it forward?
Big questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, you said, what the heck made you change from visual arts to the performing arts? It's a question I pose myself sometimes. But I started at the Holland Festival in September 2019, just before COVID. And I led two major art institutions in the Netherlands, a museum and an art institution before that for 25 years in total. And I worked with artists all over the world, international artists. I liked to lead the institution in a direction, but I also liked to work with specialists, curators, living artists, but also a lot of dead artists. And the advantage of working in performing arts is that most of the artists are alive, which made a huge difference. And there's also some real honesty in their work, because you need your voice, body, musical talents or whatever, and you're there on stage, and the emotions they convey or you convey as an artist are very honest and credible, and that's what really took or embraced me, and for me taking the leap into the performing arts, and also I think leading a team of experts. One program director of music and music theater is somewhere here, Jochem Valkenburg, maybe some of you know him, but it's really nice to work with a team of experts and let that team also grow, and putting your own background in visual arts on the table. And I think a performing arts festival, multidisciplinary performing arts festival as the Holland Festival is, it's also important to incorporate visual arts whatsoever in installation or photography or film or durational pieces. So I think it's a good addition. And maybe the most important thing is that artists don't work in silos. They can do everything. So they can DJ, they can play in a orchestra or whatever. So the silos we bring with all these genres, it's not particularly in the minds of artists. And I think if you have a diverse team, a leading team, that have all these different perspectives and the diversity also, of course, in age and backgrounds, etc., it's good for the festival. So
You're also opening up the festival to curation for co-curators. Can you say a little bit about that?
yeah. So since 2019, we started to work with associate artists. So there's no one leading artistic director as this figurehead, but it's a team. So I'm responsible for the artistic direction and for the organization. But as I said, the two program directors are there, a junior programmer and an associate artist. And it works really well because the associate artist is the maker's voice. It's always an artist. And we ask that artist to have a discussion for over 1 year, 1.5 years, and to open up his or hers or theirs universe, literally, to make or to present their new work, but also to ask, what is your message you want to convey? What do you think is important in this time? Which artist you find interesting or you want to collaborate with? And those artists, out of those corners of the earth, wherever they're based, are helping to sculpt the festival. So every year, this festival is very different, but it also is because of the artistic voice of the associate artist.
Now I'm going to jump from you to Harold, who has completely open doors in the festival. So there's no curation. So can you maybe explain? And also you have a very interesting title. I mean, most of the other festival directors are called directors or artistic director or CEO. You're called the co-chair.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know if everybody is familiar with the structure. So a few words about how that works,
Okay,
please.
so, well, the Festival of Avignon is like a fringe. You probably know the Edinburgh Fringe or Adelaide Fringe, so we have the French Fringe, actually. It's about 1,600 shows which are presented every year, and we have about 350,000 people coming to see the shows, about 2,000 people from professionals to look for the shows and so on, 150 venues which are welcoming all the shows. So we are what we call now an open access festival. It means that there is a curation, but this curation is multiplied by the number of directors of the venues because everybody has its own line. And also the economical model is completely different from a traditional festival because it's like a platform for presenting your work with the hope for the producers and the companies to find some buyers to tour after your participation to the festival. So they rent the venue to present their show. So the model is totally private and is based on the demands, on the offers, which is coordinated by our organization, which is coordinating the Festival of Avignon. And I have a double hat because I'm both a professional inside the festival because I'm owning some venues, so I'm curating my own venues, but I'm also co-chairman because I have been elected by my peers to represent the venues inside this organization. And I have a co-chairman who has been elected by the companies and producers to have in common the interest of the both sides of the system, which have to work and talk together.
So that's openness in a structural sort of way, in an institutional way, in a different sense. You also mentioned that there are some special challenges now, given what's happening in France. So how are you and your co-chair in this organization dealing with this?
Well, so I'll just say a little bit of history. Well, you know that in France we are very proud of presenting to the world French cultural exceptions, which means that since World War II we have systems which is based on the fact that the states, the regions, the cities, and all the public instances are bringing some money to build this ecosystem in which you have two different sides, the public system from one side and the private one. And the thing is that since 2008, the first subprime crisis, the public money dedicated to the tour just has been divided for 50% less. It means that in 15 years, you have 50% less shows presented in France. So our market, which was really open wide and strong, became more and more difficult. And to answer to your question, what are our challenges as a festival of Avignon, is that we are in a paradoxical situation, because the more there is a crisis in the chain of productions and touring, the more it's good for the festival. It means that we have more and more festivals, and so we are in this position that we have to deal with success that we have not chosen, and which is a consequences of the crisis of what we are supposed to help to live and to go further. And so that's really a big challenge, because we know, and especially in 2025, you can't imagine how it's going to deeply change the situation in France. And so our challenge is, well, in a way, for all the festivals in France to survive, but not from the same point of view. My point of view as a co-chairman of the Festival of is to think about surviving to the increasement and the development that we have not chosen, and we have to deal with this growth, which is consequences of a crisis. On the other side, you have the traditional festival, like almost yours, which are really in a bad situation, because there are really some very, very strong cut of money in the association, and you can't imagine the number of festivals which are decided this year in 2025 not to present any edition, to jump 1 year to see if it's possible or not to go further, and not only small festivals, but really big institutional festivals. And so our challenge is to imagine a future in which we will have to respond to a demand which is not adapted to the market, to the French market, and on the other side, to consider that we are looked by all the different producers and companies at the only one place where they can save something. And so we really have a responsibility to think about what we can do with this, because, as I said, it was not a project to be in such a situation. It's just, as I said, a consequence. And so I have not all the answers today. I can just tell you in a few words what are our base on which we want to take this responsibility in charge. And the first one that we had in mind when we become co-chairman with my colleague, Laurent Domingos, was to have an ethic vision of the festival, and to imagine that it's not because it's a market that it has to be a jungle market, and that we have to invent some rules which will balance the risk for the companies and producers to participate to the festival, and for the venues also, which are private, so they have a lot of charges for themselves, and to imagine a system in which everybody will have the same chances to find success in the festival. And that's the line that we are trying to follow. And of course, we have some other challenges, but which are in common with everywhere on the planet for the ecological problems, because you can imagine if you have 350,000 people concentrated during 3 weeks, we have all the consequences of concentration of people. So we have to deal with all this, the carbon print, with déchets, and well, everything has to be taken in charge by our institution. But the most important thing that we have to deal with is this situation that I expressed in my first words.
Yeah, so this is unsought growth development in a where your position of importance has become greater, not something that you sought, but because of circumstances that were around you, that was outside. So the other...
What is important, and just one thing that I can add, is that we do not have the power to stop this growth, because we are in a free way of
open access.
And so everybody can, which wants to play, can do it, and every people who wants to open a venue to respond to the demands can do it, and we can't stop the number of shows. Just one number, between 2023 and 2024, we had 200 more shows from one year to another one, and I'm sure that this one we will have more again, and so that's it.
Oh. The numbers, I told you, the numbers are sort of astonishing. I want to bring Martha in now, because when you talk about growth, your festival is based in Berlin. It's one of the most active cities in the world I can think of in terms of what's happening in the arts, number of concerts, performances every day. And you decided to bring this to Berlin, partly I think because you studied in Germany, you were in Germany, but explain this festival and why it's there.
Thank you, Tisa. Buenas tardes. First of all, I want to say that I'm very grateful to be back in this land, in this territory, and I want to greet all my siblings from the Abya Yala and the Turtle Island that are here today with us, with the so-called Americas. I'm from Colombia, and I moved to Berlin to study dance. So in real life, I'm a choreographer and performer. I wanted to dance with Pina Bausch, and I went there to do my professional studies with Pina. And then when I decided to become a choreographer, then I moved to Berlin because all the reasons that you just shared. And then, nevertheless, Berlin, this is inclusive, diverse city, maybe sometimes not that much. I realized that for creators from Latin America, there were no spaces, like also no real interest. So we had actually no opportunities over there. And I decided to create from scratch a space for the creators from Latin America, for Black indigenous people of color to have a spot in the city. And yeah, I summoned like different artists from the diaspora that were already working in Berlin and in Germany to expose the idea, to see if there was really like a need, like a void that we needed to fill. And of course, the answer was yes. And I decided to put myself into this adventure.
Can I ask you why, and I didn't ask you this before, so if you even think about it this time, why did you think it was important to have these voices in this particular location?
Well, I think because when you speak about diversity and different voices and having a conversation, I think that the Global South, especially the region where I come from, is underrepresented in Germany, and we are not part of the dialogue and then what is actually happening nowadays. That, and I do think that we have something to say and we have a contribution to give back to society and to our ecosystem, artistic ecosystem. And I think that Europe has a responsibility with the places where colonialism happened, because of course, the privileges that Europa has nowadays, nevertheless, the challenges even Europe is confronting right now are because of the colonial past. And then you can see like the different opportunities, and there is no equality in many different aspects.
And to some degree, this links back to the care in which you put the so-called Americas, even in your bio. So I picked that up, and to me, that perspective is really important. And for you to put it in that way shows that it is very significant to you. So therefore, to leap out of that context into a completely foreign one in the bastion of, in some way manifestations of what we often think of as the arts was fascinating. That's why I asked that question. Sure. Dorcy, it's time I brought you in. Of the festivals represented here, this is the newest.
Yep. And
in a way, in terms of purpose, very, very specific. It's a triennial. You yourself, you're a theater director. You have shows touring, and now also this festival. So, I don't know if everybody knows your festival, but you have you can introduce it a little bit, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah, me, I'm coming from theater as a first playwright, actor, and stage director. And but I live in two continents to be part in Europe, in Brussels, and half time in Rwanda because I have a centrum there. And for me, it was really important to connect not only these two continents, but also the whole world of the performing arts. But I discovered, because I'm coming from a small country, Rwanda, landlocked in the middle of the African continent, known almost only for one horrible story, because genocide happened there 30 years ago. And this really means something really concrete for us, because this festival started last year, exactly 30 years after genocide. And in Rwanda, the majority of the population are very young. They are less than 30 years, and they were born after the genocide. It's the country completely changed itself. The population changed itself. And there is a new generation of artists. And for me, it was really important to give them a platform, and not just only for them, but also to have the opportunity to host the whole world. And I discovered, I just have a centrum when I was there, the major part of my work is to try to help the young artists who want really to professionalize their practice. And we live in a country where there is a really few infrastructures for practice of art. And the artists, they don't have the specific place for them. We don't have such a building for theater play makers, for musicians there, for movie makers, and for visual artists. They share the same place. And this changed completely the aesthetics and even the art, how it's really made. When I go to see a visual artist, there are performance in the installation. And when I go to see a musician, the set is almost like a set of a theater. And that's give us the idea to create a festival, but not focus on just one disciplines only. And the Kigali Triennial has, the first edition has 11 disciplines. Next year, we will have 12 disciplines, adding architecture. And we have most of the performing arts disciplines: theater, dance, music, visual art. We have literature, cinema, art and tech, fashion design, and even gastronomy. And we add architecture. And this is interesting for us. And we decided, because I believe that in a country which faced the traumatized, we need the whole world. We need the connection with all the people. And especially after one generation, our generation, we made a major part of our work talking and facing the genocide, because it was a priority. It was a necessity to find how to deal with a very incredible story. But now I think something has been made, and we need new ideas. And the new generation are bringing really completely new ideas. But we need others, people coming from different countries. And the way this triennial is organized, we created a team of curators, to have a curator coming from Rwanda, and his partner coming from the international scene of the world. And all the time you have a duo, a binom of curators. Maybe let's take a look of the one of the trailer.
You have a 2-minute, very short video, right?
Exact.
We are here for the festival Triennial in Kigali. Happens for the first time. This is a big edition, a big challenge that they put to propose many art, many different people, international programmer. It brings a lot of people in Kigali right now.
La proposition de la triennale, je l'ai trouvée vraiment très intéressante parce que pluridisciplinaire, du cinéma, de la danse, du théâtre, de la musique. J'ai l'impression que tous les arts sont vraiment représentés et que c'est une très belle première édition qui laisse présager des futures éditions vraiment très très belles. Je crois que Kigali va devenir un hub culturel avec ce qui s'y passe parce que les Rwandais sont très créatifs et qu'en fait voilà, j'invite tout le monde à venir ici à la prochaine édition parce que c'est super.
You know, it's hard without art in ourselves, without a creative mind, without openness and emotional expression. It's very hard. And when you have tools like technology that can make your life easier to express what you want, it's something everyone would want to do.
But the most important to understand is I'm not here to talk about music or artists. It's a market, it's an industry. So when you understand that it's not just a musician somewhere in a corner just playing music, no. It's a serious thing. And I'm glad that the government of Rwanda understood that like sport, music, it's exactly the same. It generates so much money and we are so creative. So let's put all this together and do something big. As I used to say, think big and positive.
Thank you. I think that think big and positive seems to be a driving force behind a lot of festivals. And in fact, Emily, you made the point, which links to what Dorcy is doing, about the sudden splurge of European festivals at a certain moment in history.
Yeah. So when Dorcy was telling about the development of your festival, I said it's actually, if you look in time, Holland Festival, Avignon Festival, and Edinburgh are the same age. We are turning 80 in 2027, and that's not a random date. It's after the Second World War, when Europe was just in rambles, and people in different countries were thinking, what can we do to not let it happen anymore? Let's make sure that art and artists is exchanged and building bridges through art. And well, I think we're sadly enough in this actual situation we're in, and building a cultural infrastructure, a new system for artists to thrive in is very important, as it used to be in 1947 for our festivals. And it's actually amazing that both those three festivals still exist. And I was thinking about that it's, you know, if you are leading a festival like this with a big legacy, it's also, it can be felt a little bit like a burden sometimes, because everybody says, oh, what it used to be so much better, and it, I mean, there's so many comments all the time, and so many, and the time when Maria Callas was there, and, so, but the fact is, the fact that we still exist and turn our 78th edition in June this year, is that every year we start over with a clean slate. That's the fact that's so beautiful about festival making. So every year there's this clean slate, there's this discussion with artists, following artists over decades sometimes, and start reinventing the festival as a topic on top of time. So a lot of comments are always, oh, you're so, wow, it's so on top of time, it's so actual what you're doing. But of course, because we present artists that are the voices of the future. And so you can exist 80 years, and I hope your festival will too, because you start rethinking the festival every year, and you or every 3 years, and it's not us doing, it's the artists that do that.
Sure.
So I'll give it to you.
You're right, and exactly because you shared that your festival was created after the Second War in Europe, which was the traumatism of the whole continent. And I think the artists, they have a responsibility, which is not the same responsibility with politicians, but we have the ability to connect dots, even to build teams and to belong to the same part of and to create this family we all dream the world to become. And this in a structure in itself, it's an answer. We face many problems every period of time, and we live now in a very violent period of time. And I think the artists, they have the responsibility to do things. That's why, for example, even for us, we decided just to create the festival, but build it together, not only from Rwanda, but with other peoples, and to ask, even the world, come to our country, and let's grow together. And it's something really important. Even I was talking about the team of curators, and one of the curators of the dance programming is here, Hélène Dennis, and I salute her. It's the way we think we can face the different problems we have in the festival.
I'd like to pick up on what you mentioned about responsibility. We all feel responsible to do something about the world that we live in, and starting festivals is one of them. Inheriting festivals, running festivals with the circumstances around you, that's one of them. What I am hearing from all of you is a very high level of openness, of having associate artists, of co-curating, of having conversations with artists about who would like, in either the diaspora or in the area called the Americas, to come to your festival in Berlin. And of course, Harold, yours is entirely open access. So, all of this is open, which is great. However, you are individual leaders of your organizations and institutions. Who is ultimately responsible, and how do you balance this openness with your position as a leader? Because there are many leaders in this room who are struggling, and young leaders who would benefit from your sharing how you deal with this. I think being the need and the benefits of being open and yet being responsible. How do you, anybody?
Who wants to go first? Yeah, shall I go first?
Please.
Yeah, well, I started to answer a little bit to the question in my first speak. Our responsibility as leaders of this specific festival, as I told you, is really to give an ethic vision of what it is to be a part of this festival, and to consider that it's not because you are on a market that you are only ruled by the rules of a market. It means that you have to be in concurrence with your colleagues, that you have to consider that the other is a danger for your own development. Just to give you a few examples of that, I'm in charge of the international development, and that's the reason why I'm here today. And I can really tell you that there was no international policy before we started to do this work 2 years ago. And now, what I really felt is that because of this crisis that I was talking about at the beginning, there is a sort of reaction of fear of opening the doors to the world, saying that, well, if you invite some foreign companies to participate to the festival, they will take our bread, you know, they will take the possibility that we have to tour because maybe the show will be seen by buyers which will prefer to program specific shows from other ones. And my responsibility in this case is to express the fact that it's not real. Fear is not the real way to solve the crisis. And it's not because you will be afraid of the other that it will help you to find your place in these difficulties. And so, yeah, the word that I would promote in this case is to think with ethic to what we are doing, and being sure that every decision that we take is fair and is in accordance with the ethics that we have of our vision. So that's where I put the level of my responsibility every time I have to take a decision which is shared. I'm not the only one, of course, to decide from important decisions, but we know that when we decide something, for example, for the Festival of Avignon, it will have an impact for about 10,000 professionals which are concerned by what we are deciding. So we really have to think about this question of ethics before taking any decisions, just to be sure that the impact that it will have is in conscience, and that, well, we try to take the decision as ethic as possible.
I'm glad that wasn't mine. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Well, that's it.
Thank you. You were about to say something, Emily.
No, yeah, I thought maybe some concrete examples, if you. So to open up, one of the examples is sharing and caring, and be very interested in what happens in other parts of the world, especially festivals that struggle much more in countries that are not as free and open as the Netherlands. So I think it's important to share. And one of the things we did 2 years ago, or we started, is through actually the Festival Academy. It used to be part of the European Festival Association. And we had a talk, and everybody was sitting around a table talking, discussing important. And then we thought, so I looked at one of the participants and I said, do you want to do an exchange? And she said, yes, because I said we can talk and we can still talk next year, but maybe it's good to do it. So I invited 2 young festival makers, one from Durban, from the Jamba Dance Festival, and one from Chile, to really be glued to me during my festival. And they did what I and one of my programmers did. So we had this little small program, and then we visited their festivals, just to share and see how things happen. And we continued that. So it's very small, but I think it's impactful because we learn and they learn, and we network together. And it also gives a source of new points of contact. Yeah. So it's a very concrete, small thing. But and another example, and then I'll turn it over to you. But is that we have a program team, also with the associate artists. But we just founded a junior position, and we hired a young dramaturg just to support the program directors, but also to learn the profession, because programming a festival is a profession. And by doing that, you get to give someone an opportunity to really learn about it from the background, and then go in the field to take those takeaways into the field. So just...
so more ways of connecting, making more openness and bringing people in. But you are still ultimately responsible for what they do, and of course responsible for choosing which partners that you have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Dorcy, you can say.
yes, there is a responsibility, of course. For me, the leadership means, first of the time, responsibility, because you have to think about the sustainability of your the festival, to think about means, how to do in the spirit even of the event. But I think it's important for a festival to create an horizontal infrastructure, not to have such a vertical with a leader deciding for everything, but you have also to organize that, because it can't really happen randomly. It's a structure in itself. You have to think about how a vision can be shared with the most possible. And the challenge is that you have to deal with very different kind of people, with artists, with founders, with public institutions, and they all have their different agendas. And it's sometimes contradictory, and you have to deal with all this, to create this really moment, and yeah, I think there is a big responsibility, but most responsibility for me, talking about sustainability, to create a structure which can be handed to another generation, so that the institution can really continue again and again.
Did you want to jump into this one or not?
Well, of course, that absolutely, there's so many layers of responsibility, and of course politicians have a responsibility. I think established and funded cultural institutions and venues, they have a huge responsibility. I think that you take a responsibility as well when you speak about the coloniality, and when you speak about activism or geopolitical issues, when you speak about ancestral knowledge, when you speak about the interdependence of humankind and nature regarding the current crisis we are experiencing in our relationship with the natural world. And of course, in my case, I don't really talk or feel myself so much related to responsibility, but more, I prefer to talk about commitment or to talk about passion and have a different perspective. Responsibility to me is something that for sure we should not give to the artists. They have enough responsibilities by delivering their works and the offerings that they do to society. So I think in the panel before they were talking about the artists first, and I think all around that is existing because of artists doing their work. All these things have a responsibility to provide the artists and to allow them to open all these conversations and portals and worlds that take us beyond our own perspective. So yeah, I don't know if that helps.
I framed it in this way because I wanted to bring this part of thinking in, because I think festival directors, people who run festivals, are often seen as very powerful, especially, you're the administration and you say, yes, no, you choose, you get to. But having been in that position myself, I can totally relate to, in a way, what you're saying, Dorcy, that you have multiple stakeholders. Yep. And it feels like being a juggler more than anything else. Of course, you have the artists to be responsible to, and another really important group that we also need to mention is the audiences. So earlier today, somebody mentioned, there was mention of this wonderful moment when the artist and the audience can connect.
Yeah.
And that's what we actually live for most of the time. And that responsibility for me is a huge one. So just to round up, bring that question back again to you, do you at all feel powerful in any way at some point in your working life?
Well, to continue the topic.
Yes, no, maybe sometimes, you know, never.
Powerful, I wouldn't say. Well, not in my case because I'm a non-European person, non-white person. I'm a female body working in a context that's maybe totally not pro everything that I am. So it's quite challenging, actually, what I do. I do feel like I've been get the privilege, like, for example, open up spaces for artists that otherwise wouldn't get those possibilities. Like, for example, to be able to invite Lucas Avendaño, that is a Muxe artist, Zapoteca from Mexico, to perform in Radial System, that is a theater from Sasha Valls, where only big names are performing, or opening dialogue spaces in this bridge that I'm constructing between Germany and the so-called Americas. To invite Sonia Guajajara to the opening provocation speech from the Amazonia rainforest, so the people get to know this different perspective. Sonia now became the first indigenous person to be the Minister of the Indigenous People of Brazil, thanks to Lula. So I feel like I have the privilege to create these reflection spaces that, at least in Berlin, didn't exist before. And that I more than power, I feel like totally grateful. And it's like, how can I deliver more of that?
I can't call it to be powerful. There is a privilege to do what we are doing, really. And I used to be a young actor, looking to directors of festival, and just asking, please put me on stage and give me a room for just put me on under the sunlights. And yes, there is also those kind of decisions you have to take, and when you work on programming, of course you have to make choice and decide who will be on the panel or not, and exactly. But also that has to be with responsibility, because the festival creates new topics and somehow also give room to new artists, new incoming artists. And it's so, there is another responsibility we have to talk. It's also about the story. We are storytellers. And the storytelling is such a thing really important in this world, because the way it creates the way we see the world and the problems we face, and to have the opportunity and the privilege to bring different kind of people on a platform and to give them the possibility just to create a narrative. This is really something thrilling and a privilege, maybe, and a big responsibility.
Yeah, I think, of course, you're conscious of the responsibility of having the power. And I really liked the performance or the panel yesterday, and I'm pointing to Liv. She's part of the Sami up north. She had a really nice presentation. And you said you have to be very clear about the vision you have and the direction you want to. And your vision should be so realistic that everybody believes it's already there. And I think that's so it was very well said. I'm quoting you. But I really like that because I think as a leader, you're responsible for the vision and to talk about that vision to all these stakeholders and to make sure that the money follows the vision, very important. That was a lesson I learned when I was very young in this field. Money follows vision. Never ask for money. Just make sure you have a clear vision, and then the money kind of comes behind it.
Yeah.
But
from your lips to God's ears, yeah, that one, yeah.
well, anyway, but I think it's the responsibility to be very clear about where you want to bring it on, and then, yeah.
Yeah, actually, you brought up something that follows from a previous session, which is that sometimes in order to preserve the organization, the institution, all of the agendas, the values that you share and that you want to live and you want it to carry on, at some point, it is necessary, it becomes necessary, or there's pressure to compromise on your behavior, what you say, what you do, and sometimes your choices. I know that in the cancel period, I had called friends who were canceling artists and saying, like, hello, what are you doing? This is not you. I know you're not like this. But in one case, the response was, I had a call from the mayor, and I'm a fully city-funded organization. Another case was, I had a call from a major sponsor. And, you know, I cannot put everything at risk. And the struggle that we heard discussed earlier on the stage is a very real one. And so as leaders, are we facing an area where we will need to make these compromises, where the things that we want to do need to be, or is there a way to be strategic? Is it possible? Or are we at this really difficult time where the choices are really tough?
Of course, you have to make compromises. But this about the strategy, I think it's not just only for in this position. All the life we do compromise. We have to deal with people I deal all the time with my kids, and most of the time I lose the game. And it's about we have, because you can't have such a radical decision saying it was to be, and as you said, there is different stakeholders, and you have to balance, and but to keep the vision. That I think those kind of compromise have to do with the vision you have.
We're going to open this up to questions, comments from the floor, and they've been brilliant ones, so I hope that will continue. Any time now, so if you're feeling, something to share, please come up to the mic, and you will get there. Is that where you're heading, Michelle? Okay, go for it.
Can you turn this? Okay, sound great. I'm Michelle Witt, the Artistic and Executive Director of the Meany Center for the Performing Arts in Seattle, Washington. And I want to, first of all, thank you, Emily. I know I mentioned this to you in person. Thank you for being a role model in working with artists in such an expansive and impactful way. We now have associate artists also and are working with Peter Sellers right now. But the question of responsibility, Martha, you mentioned that artists should not have responsibility. And I wonder about that statement. And we've also worked with Mark Lumouti-Joseph, who talks about shared stakes. And what does it mean to share responsibility with artists and to embed them in the fabric of your work, institution, festival, to the extent that perhaps not financial risk, although and there are some cases where that works too, but what does it mean to share responsibility with artists? If you could reflect on that.
Anybody?
You're asking me?
I think anyone.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, maybe it was a bit, could be a misunderstanding what I said. artists do have responsibilities. What I meant is like, as festivals and cultural workers and institutions or whatever it is, I don't think that we should put any extra responsibilities into the artists. Like like on the contrary, like there are things that we can hold for them to let them choose their responsibilities. Like, of course, artists, I'm also an artist, and I do feel I have a responsibility with the work I do. But sharing responsibilities, yeah, of course, we have to articulate in a program what the program aims to be, that with the artist is bringing into the stage, and it is also a dance between the artist and the festival in this case. So how do we dance that dance in order to arrive into a situation that is not only for the festival, or not only for the artists, or not only for the people that are coming to see the artists, but for all of us.
Well, let's hear from more voices, because I think they're ready to go.
Hi again, Hazem Haider from Cairo, Egypt, and we have Breaking Walls Festival. And thank you, Emily, because of the exchange. One of our team already was in Holland Festival last year, and we're waiting for one from you in the coming edition. Yeah, I wrote things, so because I'm babbling a lot. So, speaking of for responsibility and my love for festivals, we have already 2 festivals back home, and everything that we do it for free. But this is to be accessible for everyone, because Egypt is a bit expensive to go to art, and also to overcome the censorship, because a huge part of our program is dedicated for the queer community, secretly. Please don't report me, huh? Yeah, I want to come again or be out. Yeah, and also for other minorities. Despite that love, it's always because of that first session and this one, it's always fascinated me, and also because of what you said, that the big festivals that we have right now, the initiative of the culture that we have right now, actually came out of wars and crisis. And since we all know and agree that culture and arts might be a major factor of healing this world, hopefully, yet we intend to forget this somehow. And most of the festivals and platforms are either extremely selective, expensive, and hardly accessible at times. And I was wondering, since we are in this room, how can we work in changing that, and actually give the power back to the people to have the rights of having culture and art, and be for everyone? Yeah.
That's a fantastic question. It's a huge question. I don't know if anybody on the panel wants to deal with this, but this is also, if anybody feels like coming up to the mic to deal with that question, please do as well. It is for all of us, and it is huge. Do you want to deal with this now, or we take some more? Okay, Dorcy.
It's a very good question, because yes, we have to think about the audience and the people, especially like in, I can imagine in Egypt, in the same situation in Rwanda, there are many people who can't really pay tickets to go to see the productions, especially if they are expensive. And we have decided, for example, just to democratize the offer of, to imagine 3 kinds of venues, to have stage in duo with if there is some needs for like lights and sound especially, but also to organize many, a part of the programming in the streets of Kigali, outside, for everybody. But the third venue was in countryside, in really very far to the city, in lakes, in mountains, and in this idea to just to bring the world not only for the happy few artists and festival, how say festival, the people who attend the festival and the culture sector, and to expand it. I think it's a really important thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, and makes art and life connect. I mean, again, on this stage, let me say, putting art in a laundromat should not be a unthinkable big news. I mean, it should be part of our lives in whatever spaces we are in. Is there a mic over there? Yes.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Cindy Cebulski. I am a creative independent producer, and I'm a baby festival producer. I'm the senior founding producer of the New York Arab Festival. So kind of combining last conversation and this one and some of the other dialogue we've had, we created this festival with the senior curator Adham Hafez, who's also been at ISPA attendee. We met at ISPA, actually, who lives in Cairo. What happened was we did a festival in New York in 2016 of the MENA Live Ideas at New York Live Arts. We thought it went very well, everybody was happy, and we kept going to different institutions and saying, let's do this again. Oh, we did Arab before. We did something 5 years ago, we did something 2 years ago, we're kind of done, we tick that box. So we said, okay, this isn't working, let's make one ourselves. And the nice thing about that is because between our mutual partnerships, what you talked about, that cancellation from sponsors, we're not government funded at all. We're not sponsored at this point, which makes it really heavy lift for us. But we have so many partners across the city that are really excited about the work, that haven't done anything like this. So they're willing to make it happen. And if we were to lose one, we have a dozen others. So it's something about having that and also giving the space to the Arab Americans and the diaspora, not only for them, but for the non-Arabs that don't know what contemporary Arab dance looks like. It might be a Syrian, Palestinian American in a green wig making noise pollution. We did that at La Mama. So this is part of the dialogue, and it's been really successful. Last year, of course, was very challenging. We were a little scared about how it was going to go because it takes place in April, after October, but it was such a time of solidarity. We had so many Palestinian voices. We had so many Syrian voices and Lebanese voices. And the audiences connected and got a chance to understand what's happening from the artists themselves. So just creating that space is so vital. And, you know, saying about festivals coming out of war, out of conflict, if you don't see something happening, as Hassan has as well, make your own. You know, and you don't have to follow the same models or break with them a little bit, but we appreciate other festival producers sharing so we can kind of be part of an ecosystem, whether we're an 80-year festival or a 4-year festival, to start to teach each other how to do it different ways, because nothing's harder than producing a festival, but also nothing's more rewarding. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Somebody standing on the side. Thank you, that's fantastic comment.
It's nice to hear, because we haven't talked about it at all, but the role of the festival as a catalyst or accelerator and a place where people can encounter. So it's very nice that you stress that. Yeah, thank you.
Please.
Hola, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pablo Solis. I come from Mexico, even though I'm here thanks to an American company called Music Works International. I want to say a lot of things. I'll try to be short, I'll try to be brief. I want to connect the conversation that we have had today with the provocations, the conflict, the festival, the forefront. First, to acknowledge and give thank you to all of you. Coming to ISPA is very inspirational, to listen all your experience, to know all your work. And first, I want to say also the importance of of showing the diversity, the cultural diversity, because I was thinking of our Argentinian Canadian friend was saying, and for example, in a conversation a couple of days ago with a Mexican living in Tucson, Arizona, that we were watching Broadway Chicago, and that I mentioned that I'm a cultural manager promoting Mexican culture. He said, oh, I wish I had the opportunity to know more about my Mexican culture. Like, I don't have the room, the spaces, the channels to access that, to choose from that. And so I think it's important that these vitrines, the festivals, like, can help us to access other ways to think, other ways to imagine us in this world. The other thing I want to say also is, in a positive way as well, I used to work here 20 years ago in a Mexican nonprofit organization. And for 6 months, I helped Mexican immigrants to get into the American society. And after watching and dealing or listening to all the stories, I approached my boss and I asked him, how do you do it? How do you live your life all day watching all this misery, poverty, lack of education, lack of opportunities, discrimination? And he told me that if you change someone, if you help someone, you are making the difference. And I mentioned this because, as well, we have not yet addressed the orange elephant in the room that will be taking office this Sunday. But I also think that we have to see the ways of keeping our work and keeping our mission, and also not be afraid as well of social media, because at the same time, of course, this discourse is taking over and it seems to be winning spaces. I have also seen independent artists to develop their audience and make a living out of touring without being in the radio, without even at ISPA, without even knowing what APAP or these organizations means. So it's just a message of inspiration. And another message that I want to share, since I have the microphone, very briefly, but we have been discussing this for a lot of years, and also in this ISPA, the possibilities of the membership for being organized in tiers. Because we from Latin America and from Africa and from the Arab world, we will never be on the same economic situation to attend these sort of events. I'm here as a very privileged person working for an American company, willing to make the difference and invest, and we are developing 2 beautiful networks in Latin America and in Africa. But I'm the exception. So I really want you to consider that possibility to really have an international society and keep opening the voices to other ways of seeing and understanding the world. Thank you.
Can I? Okay.
Sorry.
Can I quickly respond to that as a past board chair of ISPA? When I first encountered ISPA as a young manager, it was a very, very small, very privileged group of mainly men of a certain age, of a certain way, representing major institutions. Over the years, the transformation that I have seen has been unbelievable. As a young manager, I went to ISPA, my first ISPA, and then I left. And I thought, this is very nice. They're very nice people. They're even very nice to me, but it has nothing to do with me, right? But there were a couple of people, Auntie Sargent, I hope you're in the room, Mary Lou, I followed afterwards. We have been working to open this up. And yes, the finances are a real consideration. And well, I shouldn't be talking on behalf of David, but the message is clear, it is understood, it is heard, and ISPA is actively responding to this. You will not believe this room and the room that I met. So, when I first went to ISPA, is completely, unbelievably different. So yes, the journey is taking longer than we want, and there are more hurdles and there are more icebergs or whatever that needs to be broken, but it is being done with everybody's help, please. So, sorry, we're back on this side.
Hi, it's up there, here. Tisa.
Sorry?
Up.
Oh, sorry, can't see.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vincencio.
Yes, hi, I'm Vincencio from Sibiu Festival in Romania. And I wanted just add something in relation with our colleague from Egypt. Yes, we need vision, Emily, we need responsibility, but what we need the most is courage. Nowadays, with the extreme right, with religion, and to stand up, to sell our dreams to all of us, to the audience, the community we are living in, because it's nothing if we don't have this courage, especially nowadays. And it happened like for Holland Festival, for Avignon, for Edinburgh, in Romania, the same. My boss, Constantin, he created a festival after the revolution because it was the same situation. Mm-hmm. And what he did during 32 years, it was everything through courage. So big things can happen if we don't lose never the courage. Thanks.
And if you haven't been to Sibiu, you should. It's an amazing festival. It took me years to get there, but I'm so glad that I have, and I'm now a fan. Yeah. Sorry, are we back here? Yeah.
I spoke earlier, so I try to be brief. I founded my own festival 22 years ago in Switzerland. And when I see the title Festivals at the Forefront, and I listened to the provocation this morning, we also have to be on the back seat, right, to listen. And when I hear festivals in Europe now exist for 80 years soon, it would be extremely interesting to have someone analyzing their programmation in the last 80 years. Because I think that when we say so proudly it was founded after the Second World War, and now in 2025 we are not much away from something else, then we might be part of the problem. And I'm quite sure that in our way of programming and how the power structures did work and are working, we have to be self-critical and we have to have an institutional critique towards festivals, as it has been going on for museums, and we have to be allowing that we who often do frame works on stage, that we get framed, frame the framer and get some clarity about who we actually think we are in the black box of the legacies we carry. And that might open up really new solutions and new horizons for really maybe never again. But I think that when we only celebrate 80 years and the successes and not look into the other sides and the way of programmation, I noticed, for example, from the Berlin Festspiele, the Jazz Fest, that exists now 60 years, and they made an analysis of the programmation of the Jazz Fest. And that is really mind-blowing what came out. It's the whole archive is online now, and there have been PhD processes now on this, because it says so much. Because if we're now the leaders of those institutions, we carry still that same where it comes from. So frame the framer and be courageous towards yourself.
Yes, of course. Yes. Very quick
thank
response,
you.
yes.
Yeah, because it's a very good remark, and actually we sat already together with the three festivals to exactly do this and make this also even a physical book and essays and do research on the programming. And our archive will be online from this coming February, so you can everybody can research it. but it's in the making. So, but a very good reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left, so quick yes on this side, and there's somebody else on that mic as well. It's you.
Hi, my name's Freddie. I'm the artistic director and co-chief executive at Dance Umbrella, London's International Dance Festival. I'm in my currently 4th year, which relates to the question I'm going to ask. Keep it short. Do you have a succession plan after your leadership? This feels like it's related to the program Succession. Anyone has seen it? That was a bit brutal, the program, but yeah, do you have a succession plan? I know some festivals are younger than others, but yeah, is that going on in regards of your leadership?
Quick responses, yes, no? It's a yes-no answer, basically.
Yeah, great question. Actually, I would love to. I would love to have that panorama open and clear, but right now, I just to be very honest, I'm just struggling to keep the festival alive. Like, maybe many of you know about the situation in Germany in the last year, almost year and a half, and the bid cuts and the budget of culture that happened 1 month ago. They just got 3 billion for culture, with the only explanation that there is the need to save money without really openly saying where is this money going. So I arrived to ISPA Sunday night, Sunday midnight. On Monday, I'm a fellow. I'm an ISPA fellow. And I'm really beyond grateful to be here with all of you because of ISPA and all the donors, of course. The fellows, we start ISPA 1 day before. So on Monday, we have a long day only for the fellows to come together. I woke up on Monday and I saw my emails, and the first thing I saw is I didn't get the support from the city of Berlin to do my festival this year. Yeah, so.
Okay, we have one more question and a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
so
I just went out to the session. I took a chance to walk through the Central Park, which really helped me to get grounded and to realize maybe it was the best moment to get that bad news because I'm here with the boldest people, with the most inspiring people. So I promised myself I wasn't going to be depressed all this week and I wasn't going to cry. But yeah, this is the challenges that we are facing right now.
Would you like to answer that very quickly, Irene? The succession plan question? Do you want to answer that very quickly or not?
Informally, yes. Formally, I feel, in a festival, if you're not the founder, you're just a passing by, I think.
A caretaker in a guard.
A caretaker, yeah.
Dorcy, you want to respond to that? No? No? Okay, so we'll go to the next.
Hi. So, Martha, I'm terribly sorry. That's gutting news, and my hands went a little bit sweaty when I heard that because I think we can all empathize. I'm Jenny Billfield. I'm the president and CEO of Washington Performing Arts, which was founded by Patrick Hayes, who also co-founded ISPA. And Tisa, to your point, I think this is the sort of room he always envisioned. The people running the arts at that time that he helped launch this were very different. But I think he aspired to this sort of connection across countries and cultures and sectors that is so much a part of our community now. I've been thinking a lot about this tension between who we are as leaders and the world that we're approaching. And I'm in Washington, D.C., which we know is hosting a big political transformation, and the scaffolds are being set up about 7 blocks from our office. So this is very much on my mind. But I don't feel alone in navigating this tension. First of all, because our field has been dealing with some sort of tension for many, many years, whether the culture wars of the 90s. There's history and knowledge within the many generations in our field. So if you're new to the field, learn from the people who have navigated the different cycles of churn and emotional wrench in our field. It's very helpful. At the same time, I'm finding that
people in so many other sectors. We are funded by individuals, by corporate entities, public utilities, government, talking with friends in every single sector. Everyone is trying to figure out what this next period of time looks like and how they are reconciling their own moral compass alongside their institutional role, alongside their public persona, whether it's in social media or in their programming. And one of the things that I think we can do is take this conversation to all the people who are our partners or potentially partners. So in expressing that this is a tension, asking them how they're navigating it, because they are dealing with employees who are going through the wrenching process of wondering whether they're going to be targeted or removed from the country or discriminated against. This is not unique to the arts, and we have more of a vehicle and a paradigm for channeling this in a way that compels people to us. Not every industry has that, or most actually don't, but I'm finding a lot of very helpful advice from people who want us to do well and want us to thrive. So I would encourage this conversation with corporate partners, with government partners, because that's the coalition to build. It's not just within the arts. We speak a shared language in many ways, but it's within our individual communities and building that sense of rootedness around the courage that you spoke of. We have to have it across sectors. It can't just be within our field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to close on such a positive, forward-looking note. We are actually out of time, and I think that's one of the tyrannies that we have to respect. I just want to thank everybody who spoke, everybody who listened, and I'm immensely grateful for the people who founded ISPA that allowed us now to be together in this way, and I encourage us all to tell stories, help the cause, go forward, and go do festivals. They're great fun. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.